The Tales of series of games is a long-running JRPG series which are generally pretty solid. Their long history is littered with games that are kind of good and, pretty decent. And also a smattering of games that are not bad. No. They're just okay. Perfectly okay games. But there's a new game in town, and will this one arise to the challenge? Okay, so Tales of Arise is the latest in the Tales of series, and to cut an incredibly long story short, it's really good. It is yet another installment in the JRPG series that, is well known for its pseudo-medieval kind of magical fantasy setting with swords and magic and...
A paradise where the souls of the departed could rest forevermore. Oh, how wrong we were. In the face of Rena's unimaginable technology.
Oh, well, that took an unforeseen turn. The game takes place on the planet of Dana, in which the Renans, who invaded from a nearby planet, rule with an iron fist and intense subjugation. The people of Dana, the Danans, toil away in labour mines until their inevitable demise, working only for their ruling and controlling lord. And if that just isn't the perfect metaphor for life.
Death.
The Renans get away with this totalitarian regime due to their ability to use astral arts, magic, shown by their bright eyes. As the Danans are unable to do this, it would thus be assumed that they have dark eyes. Everything checks out there. You'll be taking the role of a mysterious figure in an iron mask, slowly but surely amassing this motley crew as you go around and overthrowing the various local lords to put, nothing really in place. But, I'm sure everything will work itself out. It's not like people would ever, let's say, use whatever minor insignificant advantage they have to ultimately just use that as an excuse to push others into the dirt in order to gain ever so slightly incrementally bigger advantages, because why would people do that to their fellows, right? But we don't actually have time to sit and contemplate the consequences of our actions when it comes to disrupting global political figures with little to no actual backup plan. Because we've got to go to the next land, or the next, to kill one of 5 evil lords in their respective colourful lands, each one being as nefarious as the last. As you land down in each area of a particular element, you're given the chance to marvel at the sheer beauty of the world, abhor the increasingly dire circumstances of slavery that takes place in the world, and eventually do a dungeon or 2 at the behest of the local resistance groups, all to slowly but surely work your way up to killing these lords. But these are the top echelons of Renan society, the strongest individuals there are, engaged in the crown contest, a competition to see who can pillage the land for as many natural resources as possible in 7 years. Not realizing that they should have just invested in cryptocurrency and it'd really save on the whole slavery thing. How could you possibly take down these incredibly strong figures?
With sheer brawn like his, he can knock you out with one hit, and it's practically suicide to go up against him when he has a weapon.
Your sneak attack guy, like it. This is a great way to take down an evil lord.
In any case, this is the end for you. You won't be getting out of here alive.
Oh god, I think things have gotten away from us here. Yes, revolutions never come easy, and heads will inevitably have to roll. And in the Tales of series, combat normally takes off in a circled off enclosed area where you are free to run around and smash your enemy to bits with a number of combos and moves, shouting their names with every instance. And nothing's really changed here in Tales of Arise. However, things have really risen for the better, and is ultimately just really, really good. You'll be running, jumping, and dodging around the combat field, trying to not get hit by the various foes in the ongoing medley of blows, all while smashing the attack button. And then, beyond that, the face buttons, which are mapped to special skills that you may be able to further string along in your combat flurry to fatally frustrate your foes.
These little ones are hardly worth our time.
Previous Tales of games used an SP or MP system, which limited how much you can use skills entirely based on this secondary resource. And it often meant that most would find themselves halfway through a dungeon and running on empty, reduced to simply stringing the same 3-hit basic combo together until the sweet embrace of death finally took hold.
Yes, my lady?
Something you wanted to say?
But Tales of Arise improved that system dramatically by just giving you rechargeable ability uses. Meaning that while you've strung together a number of moves, you'll need to take a brief pause in the combat to regain your breath, before once more diving into the fray to shout Sonic Thrust once more. This develops further as you unlock more abilities and more skills, allowing you to regain this quicker, and before you know it, you'll be lost in an utter kerfuffle of abilities and effects, but safely knowing that things are probably dying. Although, sometimes the enemies may not be dying, because there are enemies called Gigants. Gigants, they're gigantic enemies who are meant to be there as sort of additional challenges. They're scarier, they're tougher, they're juicier, because they give you better rewards and help improve your stats. But they are also just sponges for punishment, and this can be said about a lot of the normal bosses as well. Some of them may have specific moves you need to look out for and call upon your allies to stop them from casting a spell or disrupt the big charge move that they're doing. But for the most part, they are just being punched in the face quite dramatically by yourself, pulling off some incredible combo, stringing together move after move after move. And it turns out you've barely made a scratch on them, and there's hardly a dent in their needlessly large HP bar. My god, I think we're doing it! With that 200 combo, this thing will be down no time. Sonic Thrust! No. What? Sonic Thrust? We only did like 5% of its health. But we fought solidly for like 2 minutes! What do you mean? Sonic Thrust! Well, get ready for more minutes. Oh god. Sonic Thrust. What I'm saying is that while a lot of bosses will have particular phases where they break out bigger spells, or you have more things to counter and operate around with, getting through each phase is tedious because of their large, needlessly swollen, stuffed health bars, and it just makes the fights long and drawn out, and more of your attacks just feel ultimately pointless because you're just constantly going onwards. The combat is still great, and some of the large story fights are incredible and equally build up through impressive cutscenes and the general striking visuals of the game coming through into the fights.
I think not. Get
Being absolutely astounded by the spectacle and godlike powers being thrown at you, and then maybe sometimes you're still there watching those powers, still shouting Sonic Thrust, and like many things in Tales of Arise, it goes on a bit too long. Oh no! This game goes on for too long! Tales of Arise's general setting and structure is formulaic as you go from region to region in a variety of colours and climates, defeating the local residing aristocracy. And as this all builds to a sense of liberation with a grand finale, it bleeds onwards into the unfulfilled JRPG silliness plots that you may come to expect. Yes, the natural conclusion of every story is that of killing God. But why have a sequel which seemed quite reasonably set up when you can staple on another third of the game that is both tonally and thematically very different as you descend into, I don't want to say generic JRPG weirdness, but the classic JRPG weirdness, and also suddenly deciding that, like, hey, enslaving a planet wasn't necessarily okay, but what if, you know, it was perfectly like a reasonable thing to do? Oh god, no! Don't get me wrong, there is actually a lot to love with this story. Goodness, it has unsurprisingly taken a darker turn for the sort of JRPG series with all the slavery and liberation and, you know, well, yeah, that. And there are so many heartfelt exchanges between characters that are wonderful, and scenes of conflict that leave you on the edge of your seat, yearning to know what's gonna happen. It's really good. As ever with Tales of games, you better start loving your party, as you'll be spending a long period of time with them. And thankfully, everyone in this party is kind of great. Rinwell and Law act as the feisty kids of the group who don't really ever overstay their welcome. I'm looking at you, Carol. One of them carries an owl named Hootle who you'll want to protect with violent force.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. Right, Hoodle?
Kisara is this incredibly earnest guard who ultimately takes the role of the mum of the group, and she is just so straightforward and kind-hearted.
That's no excuse. Your outward appearance says a lot about your inner well-being.
Zohalim is the exceptional idealist, and some of the best story beats come from and through him and his ideals, fighting against his pragmatism.
I commend you for your boldness, but it won't work on me.
Then there's Shion and Alphen, the main duo who slip constantly between being deeply in love with one another and possibly hating one another, and it is this constant delight to watch the rest of the party give each other knowing looks and nods with each interaction between the two. This party is easily likable. Their struggles and development play out constantly throughout the game, and it's nice that these characters' trauma is not just happily concluded and never spoken of again, and it constantly continues to shape their reactions. Just watching the various skits and side cutscenes is repeatedly a delight due to watching these people bounce off one another. Until, as always, things go on a bit too long. Lengthy cutscenes rife with expositional drops are known to happen, and if you're not paying much attention, it won't be mentioned ever again, and unfortunately, it is all on the test. Then you'll begin to hit a point where every time you see that little symbol in the corner, you're filled with dread at yet another side scene to witness. It's not that these are bad, it's that there are normally 3 of them, and you just want to plow forwards, but suddenly everyone's talking about having bowel pains or something. Who cares about the bowel pains? The world is literally dying. There is a reason that most modern games nowadays use audio logs or something similar to have these sorts of extra scenes and extra bits of dialogue, and that's to allow the player to continue running around, just looting the various areas and all sorts of bits and pieces while this scene plays out. You're left still engaged in playing the game. In Tales of Arise, you don't have that, and instead you're just left watching these scenes play out as the dialogue washes over you like this slowly rising tide.
So what you're saying is, even before the Renans invaded, the Dahnans were still being ruled over.
It would appear that the
The longer
traditions
you
of the
use
Guard
it,
are
the
still
more you
alive
get
in
burned.
their
There might
What do
be
you
an
mean?
indirect way to
The
tap
longer
into
you
it.
use it,
I wouldn't know.
All of this said though, Tales of Arise is an incredibly good game. It has streamlined so many of the JRPG elements to just kind of smooth out the experience, to make it simpler, but more importantly, more fun. But don't get too worried if, you're a classic diehard JRPG fan, because there are enough elements going on that, if you dig enough down into the game, there will be bits and pieces to truly get lost in, because it's just really good. Is it my favourite Tales of game? Maybe. You see, Tales of Vesperia still holds quite a solid remark in my increasingly spotty memory, and that is partly down to the fact that, well, it just had a better cast and world outside of the main party and quest. Tales of Arise has basically 6 characters, and also your party contains 6 characters. Do you see the issue? Like every other character you come across who are supposedly maybe a key supporting character has the look and feel and gravitas of any other generic NPC waiting to be forgotten and forever lost to the minutiae of a Wikia page. The same can be said of the monsters you'll be facing, who never develop beyond the exact same archetypes, except now they're a different colour. They still have the same moves and the same way to beat them. Here's some enemies from the final dungeon. Here's enemies from every other point in the game. Oh no, they're the same. Tales of Arise, however, is a game I still feel compelled to play. Currently, I find myself exactly halfway through the final dungeon, and good lord, does it feel like it's never going to end. But despite the fact that it just kind of goes on, I still want to engage in all these other side optional dungeons that I've stumbled upon wildly underleveled for, and it's clearly endgame content, but their siren song keeps pulling me through the game because the combat and the characters are just quite fun and endearing. Tales of Arise is quite incredible, and sure, while it may ultimately be quite episodic in nature, the scenes within those episodes are downright impressive and sometimes chilling, with incredible impact, and they're just engaging to deal with, because, well, Tales of Arise is good. It's great. It's just pretty darn solid.